Dangerous Data Podcast, Survival of the Fittest for the Information Age. Join us as we discuss data ethics, free speech, and privacy in the age of AI. On this computer. All right. So, hey, good day. This is Kevin Leversey with Dangerous Data, the intersection of data and AI for the world. Basically, we cover data privacy, and what that means in the age of AI. Today with me, I have Ty Lee of Anti-Woke. He's an author, publisher, and activist, and he's been very active online. I keep seeing him everywhere I go, and I thought it would be a great idea to interview him and basically have a conversation about what he's doing and the work and why it's so important. So, good day, Ty. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Thanks for having me on your show, Kevin. It's nice to meet you. So, a little bit about me is that I'm a second generation Korean American. My parents are Korean American immigrants, legal immigrants, and I've I used to live in the DC Fairfax area, and now I live in Denver, Colorado. So I'm the founder of Anti-Woke Books, which is a book and comic book publishing company. And this Anti-Woke Books is part of the Comicsgate movement. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Comicsgate, it's essentially a movement of comic book creators who are fed up with the woke propaganda that has infected mainstream comics.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's a lot of woke stuff in the comic book industry, such as recently there was a comic published by DC Comics, which featured a pregnant Joker. So Joker is now a trans man who is pregnant, which is just weird. Doesn't really add anything to the story. And there's like a lot of race swapping and lectures on pronouns that have pretty much taken over comic books. And all of this is leading to declining sales, and the comic book industry is pretty much failing right now. And there's a movement called called Comicsgate, which is kind of all about taking comics back to its roots and going back to making quality comic books rather than trying to push some sort of a left-wing agenda.
Right. So it's kind of put the storyline on the back burner and instead put woke ideology on the front.
Yeah, that's pretty much what's happened because what's happened is that essentially a bunch of SJWs, essentially they use diversity and representation as a Trojan horse to bully their way into the comic book industry and to get jobs in the comic book industry that they're not actually qualified for. So we have a bunch of comic books with really bad writing, really bad art, and that's essentially what's now the norm in the mainstream. And these SJWs, they don't even read comic books, and many of them have even admitted it. They're just activists who, I guess, they're just trying to promote their ideology, and they don't really care about the quality of comics.
It seems like that. It seems like all of popular media has been hijacked by the woke left, and what's more important is the spread of ideology versus actual storytelling. It's kind of pivotal. So tell me about some of the books that you've published and what you're working on now.
So right now, I'm actually working on a few different books. So I'm working on two different comic books as well as a novel. The the novel I'm working on is like a splatterpunk horror type of novel. So the novel's called New Guantanamo, 28 Days of Rehab Therapy, Guantanamo Bay style. It's
I love it already. What a great name. Honestly, it's awesome.
yeah.
I love it already, dude. This is going to be good. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so the novel essentially revolves around the fictional substance positivity movement, where addiction is beautiful and rehab centers have now been banned for, hey, so now in this world, there are no rehab centers. And due to the lack of rehab centers, there's like a giant void. And that void is filled by New Guantanamo, which is an underground rehab facility that's run by former CIA interrogation specialists who, during the night, kidnap drug addicts and bring them to New Guantanamo, where they're given a very special type of rehab treatment. And that's essentially the premise of the novel. And I'm also working on two different comic books. The first is a comic book about the rooftop Koreans. As a kid, I've always been inspired by the rooftop Koreans, and
I talked my last podcast. Sorry to interrupt you. Got to interview Tony Moon, who was Roof
cool.
Korean. Yeah, yeah. He's been kicked off Twitter. Hopefully, he's back. I'm going to try to find him. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the rooftop Koreans, and especially because of the increased crime rate thanks to the Biden administration. There's a lot of crime going on, and people defunding the police. S- So I feel like, it's it's time for the rooftop Koreans to make a comeback. So I figured I'd write a comic book about it.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
And another book that I'm working on is non-political. It's kind of like a fantasy type of thing. It's inspired by the video games Eco, Shadow of the Colossus, and the Last Guardian. So it's kind of like a story about a girl and a monster, and they're in this large forest, and it's basically about a story about getting home. So that's the other comic book I'm working on. So those are the three primary projects that I'm working on.
It's good. It's good. So, how long has Anti Woke been in business? And
We're actually relatively new. I started anti-woke books during the pandemic because one of the best things about the pandemic is that I get to work at home. I
right.
mean, I work in corporate America, so my background is in marketing, and thanks to the pandemic and having to work at home, I just have a lot more free time on my hands, and I figured I would start my own side business, and that's how Anti-Woke Books was created.
Nice, nice, nice. You don't have to name the companies. Yeah,
Yeah, I probably don't want to be fired.
yeah, probably. I worked in corporate America, cut my teeth in the '90s, and doing big tech. Went through the first .com boom, and then went into startup land about 2003. Never looked back. But it's interesting because it's like the golden handcuffs. You get stuck in it's even worse now. It's like I don't know how people can manage, especially with like ESG. And we're in a social credit system, and that's what people don't understand is um, the power of the culture war. One of the reasons I wanted to have you on is because I see that you're right there in the midst of the culture war. If you could talk about the culture war as you see it and what your role is in it, and then what you'd like to see happen more.
Well, for me, I think the culture war is very important. I feel like one of the biggest issues with many non-woke, non-liberal people, I guess especially with conservatives, is that many conservative parents they discourage their children from pursuing careers in the arts. They're always telling their kids to get jobs in business, law, or STEM. And I think the problem with that is that it leaves a giant void for the SJWs to take over the arts. And so I do feel like a lot of the, let's say, the bad stuff that's been happening in the entertainment is partly the fault of conservatives for kind of abandoning it. And there's a old saying, politics is downstream from culture because it's the culture that shapes the minds of young people, and it's like the kids would rather listen to celebrities and rappers and people like media personalities rather than listening to uh scientists, pastors, and professors. Or I mean, well, I guess they do listen to their woke professors, but it's more like these entertainment figures have essentially kind of taken over the role of parents for many children, and I feel like when it comes to culture, whoever controls the current culture controls the future. And yeah, that's why I started anti-woke books because I'm noticing that a lot of books they're just really woke. It's not just with the comic books, even with novels. It's that I remember a long time ago I tried to submit a novel to a publisher who told me that they didn't like the fact that my protagonist was a white man,
Oh,
despite the
wow.
fact,
Who was the publisher?
yeah, um, I'd rather not say, but they're not that big though. Actually really small.
That's
I
good. That's really interesting.
yeah, I think the problem is that they kind of like try to. I feel like the editors as well as I guess agents would they want to like force their politics into various different books. They don't want they want all books to have like some sort of a black transgender Muslim main character rather than just having just a regular main character, and they want like themes dealing with the climate emergency or global warming or racism, and that's kind of what the book industry has become because there are some people in the book industry like uh, what's their name? It's I don't know how you say it, but it's like N.K. Jemisin. Basically, what she does is she's always race baiting and always talk about how there's some sort of a bunch of random people on the right who are harassing her. And then shortly after making this announcement about people on the right harassing her, she always has an announcement for a new book. And that's kind of how, yeah, that's kind of how people are selling books now. They're trying to sell books on
Outrage.
rage farming. Yeah.
Yeah. It's sad to see the decline from what once was basically merit-based storytelling into this neo-Marxist postmodern bastard child of woke. You know, it's 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 become a tragedy of the commons. Are you familiar with the tragedy of the commons?
Yeah, I am.
So it's become a tragedy of the commons, right? It's like the lowest common denominator is now considered. It's like the victim Olympics. Whoever is the bigger victim is the hero, and it's hilarious. It's we're going to go into the dark ages, and I think that's why the powers that be are using woke as a weapon against the populace. It's like snails voting for salt, right?
Yeah.
Um, my God, dude, it's terrible. What are your thoughts on Velma?
Velma, well, for one, I didn't actually watch it because I don't like to watch anything that's woke. I feel like my time is valuable and I'd rather spend that time doing something productive rather than watching woke stuff. But I feel like the way Velma was marketed is that if you don't watch it, you're racist. That's kind of how the marketing strategy was for that TV show. And I feel like they can't get people to watch anything on merit, so
It's all
they
good,
just
right. It's got to be.
yeah.
It's got to be that. If you don't like our movie, you're terrible. It's almost it's hilarious because I didn't realize this, but Velma was written by that Indian author who inserts herself into every production that she's part of, right? And so she wrote Velma as a Indian immigrant, and it's just bitter, petty, ridiculous. What's hilarious is that the left is now claiming Velma is a right wing psyop because it's written so bad It's what the right wing thinks the left wing's comedy is like. And it's like, oh my God, the amount of mind fuck that you have to go through to think that Velma's actually a right wing conspiracy to make the left look bad instead of owning your own ideology is hilarious. I mean, these are the people that don't know what bathroom to use. Oh,
Yeah.
that's hilarious. I didn't realize the complete fallout from what a dumpster fire has become. Here's what gets me, okay? It's not about making profit anymore. This is the World Economic Forum's stakeholder capitalism. It's about the message, not the profit to the shareholders. It's about control. And game theory requires that everybody agrees, that everybody follows along. That's why zero is such a dangerous, such a powerful number. Because if you have zero dissent amongst the major studios and so on, then that's the game. You won the game, and that's why you see that they can't allow even one personality to speak out against the system. And it's interesting because the left has been hijacked by this woke Borg hive mind. Do you want to talk a little bit about that and what you've seen? I guess.
Well, yeah, I guess I can talk about that. Well, I do remember around 10 years ago, I was actually considered a moderate liberal. It's that my politics have not changed at all. I'm still the same person that I was 10 years ago, but it's just that the left has gone so far left that by today's standards, I'm now considered a conservative, which is kind of odd. But I think with the woke, it's I feel like it's kind of like all this started with Obama because prior to Obama, there really was no woke stuff, and I think that Obama was kind of like the guy who's trying to bring back the woke stuff because it seems like for me, it seems like I guess it's like a battle between individual liberty versus central authority. And it's the idea that the individual is the decision maker that bothers the elites because they want to be the ones to make the decisions. They kind of have this, trust the experts, trust the science, that we get to decide what people do and can't do. And I feel like the the goal of wokeism is to ultimately transfer all power from the individual to a small group of central authoritarian elitists. So that's kind of how I see wokeism.
That's a very good statement. I'm actually writing this down and tweeting what you're saying. That's really good. So the elites want to be in control. They get to decide. The goal of woke is to transfer power of the individual to the central power.
Yeah, that's kind of what it is about doing because I feel like a lot of times this like the woke are infamous for gatekeeping. Like if you don't follow their ideology, you get fired. You can't have a job again. Like the goal is to, of course, I guess, be part of the hive mind. And another thing is, it's like these woke people, they believe that their decisions benefit humanity the most, and that the individual is not informed and educated enough to make their own decisions, which is kind of like what was going on with vaccine mandates, as well as
Right.
tried to ban gas stoves and things
Well,
like that.
when you ban the doctors who disagree, right? You no longer have. So, what I found was interesting was as all this started to occur, I was very cognizant about different opinions, right? So I don't know about you, but I like to see different opinions, especially when it comes to medical stuff, right? And
Yeah.
being here in Asia, I saw that uh, Zero Hedge published the lab leak theory on January 26th. And I read it and it was like, whoa, this is powerful. So this was a lab leak, it was a gain of function. And they got deplatformed off of everything instantly. And as soon as that happened, my spidey senses went, right? Like, wait a second, it's Zero Hedge. Nobody, I mean, they have a good listenership, but nobody really cares about Zero Hedge, right? Only a select group. The fact that every major platform deplatformed them for the lab leak theory said, hey, they hits the nail on the head. And that was January, that was in January of 2020. And so from that moment on, I was instantly aware of them throttling the conversation. Then when the lockdowns began, I was following the Great Barrington Declaration. And I was appalled to find out that Twitter et al., YouTube, whatnot, were banning Oxford University, Stanford University, Nobel Prize laureates from discussing the data models. That's when I realized the lockdowns aren't about the virus, they're about something else. And then it got me to, like, why are we locking down? And then in March, the World Economic Forum came out with, hey, COVID, the Great Reset. And like, how can you write a book in a month? You know, right? Like, how
Yeah.
can you write a book, COVID and the Great Reset, that's out in March, and it was the beginning of March when Trump locked the world down? You know, like this, right? And then I started finding out about Event 201, and then how everybody was giving coronavirus stuffed animals. And this is like October of 2019, a month before COVID was released. So I think what we've come down the rabbit hole far enough to where all the conspiracy theorists were right. They used woke as an ideology to capture the world, and it's not working. So now we have a war. So what are your thoughts on the state of things now, and where do you see things going?
Well, I read somewhere recently that Klaus Schwab was at the WEF forum talking about how there was going to be a major cyber attack in the future, which kind of seems a little suspicious. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if he's the one behind that cyber attack, because to me, he kind of comes across as a James Bond type of villain. And it sounds like because the people like Klaus Schwab and the authoritarian elites, they know that they're starting to lose. They're trying to try other angles like this whole climate emergency nonsense about how they need some sort of a carbon tax or some sort of a carbon footprint tracker, that you have some sort of a carbon score. And they're also trying all this stuff about anything they disagree with is automatically hate speech,
Right.
misinformation, that or Russian propaganda. That, like, they're trying to turn that into something, as well as I do feel like the war in Ukraine is kind of linked with all this, because the Ukraine is kind of like the money laundering operation for the global elites. That's where they're getting their money from, because it's been revealed that uh, Zelensky, he took the aid money and invested in FTX, and then FTX then made large donations to various Democrats and Republicans like Kevin McCarthy. And it just the whole war in Ukraine is basically just a giant money laundering operation to help finance their globalist politicians.
Yeah, yeah. I want to play this FTX video so bad. Can I play this FTX video?
Yeah.
Oh man, I want to play this video so bad. Oh, it's so good. Okay, hang on one sec. I'm gonna play this, dude. I just gotta do this, dude. It's gotta so share screen, hang on one second. I got it. All right, here we go. Can you see it?
Yeah, I can see it.
All right.
Hey fucker, we in the Bahamas and guess who the fuck this is? Sam McFreed is the asshole who stole all your crypto, and I fucking found him. I get Slippy in the grippy all night. This fuckwad had the biggest exchange in the world and he fucked it out. But why? Well, first of all, fuck you. I really did waste $370 to find this fat fucking nerd in the Bahamas. I wanted to get super rich because bitches love money and I love bitches. He used Reddit to find the ultra grippy. Then he saw Caroline's ass line in her jeans. I was hitting it from the back. She starts calling me Chunk Daddy. Got her singing like Michael Jackson. Left ass cheek was cramping. I was about to tap the fuck out, but once she gave the slippy sippy grippy from Mississippi, she vanquished my neck. And she even brought the cucumber like I asked. So you fucked over almost 1 million people for the grill grippy. Fuck yeah.
Dude, I love that dude. It's hilarious. Oh my God. That guy is such a chode.
Yeah, it is.
The fact that New York Times, everybody else running puff pieces on him just shows how corrupt our entire system is. You know, I have a feeling. What are your thoughts on Elon taking over Twitter? Why do you think he did it, to be honest with you?
I think I know Elon said something about he viewed Twitter as like the public town square of the internet, and he wanted the public town square of the internet to be non-biased and politically neutral, which makes sense as to why he bought it, as most social media companies have a far left-wing bias, and even the Twitter leaks have proved that the Biden administration has been essentially telling Twitter content moderators to silence and ban and shadow ban certain people, which obviously violates the First Amendment in the US Constitution, as big tech is operating as an agent of the state, which I feel like that's like really crossing the line. I feel like that is an impeachable offense. And what I like about Elon is that he is basically cleaning house in Twitter. I believe he fired 80% of the staff, and despite the fact that he fired 80% of the staff, it's operating better than ever, and it's a lot faster. Because I remember on my Android phone, Twitter used to be really slow and practically unusable, but now I can actually use Twitter on my phone, which is nice. And I feel like with Elon coming into Twitter, it's like for the first time ever, the rules apply to everyone. Like in the past, there was a guy named Chad Loader. I don't know if you're familiar with him. So he's like a member of Antifa, and he's famous for doxing and harassing
Yes.
people. Yeah. So he was actually finally banned, and now that Elon has taken over, because in the past, the Twitter content moderation team, they let Chad Loader and people like Keffels get away with harassing, doxing, and inciting violence, and swatting people. But now the rules apply to everyone. Anyone that's engaging in doxing,
Faithful.
harass.
It's now
Yeah,
faithful, bitches. You know, when Tyler Lorenz and then Keith Olbermann, right, was tweeting from his,
yeah,
you know what I mean? It's like it's like all of a sudden they're angry because the ruling elite, the journalists, always felt that they were above the common people and that they could say whatever they wanted and they were protected as some sort of priest class. And the hierarchy was smashed. Everybody's pretty much the same asshole. Thank you for your $8. Yeah, you know what I mean. That's the best. That was the best comeback ever. Thank you for your $8. You know, that's good. I've enjoyed this conversation. We've got about 5 minutes left for this one. What are you working on now, and what do you hope to see for 2023? What do you want to leave people with?
Well, I think for me, my whole life was about trying to be more of a shaper of events rather than being a victim of circumstance, as I'm a strong believer that victimhood is a choice, that people choose to be victims, but you can't be a victim unless you choose to be. And I think what I really want to do is make some sort of a impact in the culture war, which is why I started my company, Anti-Woke Books. I want to help move books in a different direction than what's going on right now. And another thing with my books is that I want to promote conservative and libertarian and traditional values rather than as some sort of a counter to all the woke liberal values that are now in most books these days. So I think for me, what I really want to do is instill traditional conservative values in at least one person. And if I can do that, I will see myself as a success. And hopefully I can do that with multiple people. So that's kind of my
Like mission.
main goal. Yeah.
That's good. That's good. How can people find you?
Well, to find me, they can go to I can be found on pretty much every social media site, Twitter, Facebook, Parlor, and all the as well as Instagram. So my username on all those sites is the same. It's anti-woke books. And also I am currently working on a new website, antiwokebooks.com. And I would say that's the best way to reach me.
Okay, cool. Definitely. This is a really good conversation. I will probably have you on again. There's other people maybe have you on a round table. Because I think that you definitely bring something to the table. Sorry for the pun. I just couldn't think of any other words at the same time. But I appreciate your time on this. I like what you're doing. I think it's important that we do seize control. One of the things that really got me is you spoke openly about how he who controls the culture controls the future. And
Yeah.
and it's obvious that this is not about making money in Hollywood, it's about changing the culture. And you have to ask who's behind that. And the fact that, and a lot of people aren't even talking about this, the fact that the CCP and World Economic Forum and all the elites are in the same bed together, it lets you understand what are they really trying to do.
Yeah, that's true. And I do feel like the CCP in a lot of ways is kind of helping promote some of the woke stuff because I read something somewhere that the CCP was using shell companies to make large donations to far left leaning NGOs like BLM. So I do think that they are actually promoting wokeism in order to try to destroy the West.
Yes, yes, absolutely. TikTok for CCP China is a lot
Yeah.
different than TikTok in the West with all the dancing and crap. So I appreciate your time, Ty. And this is Kevin Lemersy with Dangerous Data.